Hi, I'm Erica, and I hope your week is off to a fantastic start. I'm thrilled that you're here, and if you're new to the Tea Mind, then welcome. This is a lovely, warm, cosy space where we pause for tea so that we can reconnect with ourselves, rebalance our mind, body, and spirit, and learn how to savour those precious moments before they slip away. In each episode, we explore how something as simple as a cup of tea can be a gateway to mindfulness, mental fitness, and learning to be more present in the way that we live. With inspiring tea routines, thought-provoking insights, and heartfelt conversations with amazing guests, this is your time to pause, rebalance, and thrive. Life is fast, but your tea doesn't have to be. So pop the kettle on, grab your favourite mug, and let's dive into the art of living with a tea mind. Okay, so welcome to this episode. As more and more people are starting to embrace mindful drinking, the shift away from alcohol isn't just what we're giving up, it's more about what we're gaining instead, whether that's a better sleep, more mental clarity, or a deeper appreciation of flavour and ritual. The mindful drinking movement is reshaping social norms. In this episode, we're going to be exploring the growing trend of people cutting back on alcohol, the rise of alcohol-free brewing, mindful drinking, and how this may all relate to your mindful pause for tea. Today, I am over the moon to be joined by a true trailblazer in the world of brewing, Sonja Mitchell. And Sonja's journey her journey into beer began with a victorious rugby match where she discovered that nothing beats the taste of a freshly poured pint. But as life got busier, balancing a career, 3 children, and a dog, she found herself searching for a beer that delivered on flavour without the next day regrets. Something that I can really relate to as well. Finding the options lacking, she did what any bold adventurer would do. She jumped ship from her day job and launched Scotland's first dedicated alcohol-free brewing company, Jump Ship Brewing, of which I am a huge fan. From brewing her first batch of Yardarm, an award-winning lager that beat global brands and continues to do so, to now supplying over 350 stockists worldwide, Sonja and her amazing team are redefining what alcohol-free beer can be. With her core beers and lots of exciting collaborations and a commitment to sustainability and to giving back, Jump Ship is proving that great beer doesn't need alcohol to be world class. So grab a brew, alcohol-free of course, or a cup of tea, and get ready to be inspired by Sonja's incredible journey. So hi Sonja, welcome to the Tea Mind podcast. How are you today?
I am very good, thank you. Thanks for having me along.
You're welcome. And I'm just brewing up some tea today. I hope you've got something to drink, one of your
I
beers, hopefully.
have a can
Yeah.
of my Yardarm lager with me.
Fabulous. Well, too early for alcohol-free beer for me. I do tend to keep that to the evening. So I'm having a little immunity boost today, just to perk me up a little bit. But we first met years ago when you did some amazing marketing work for etiquette around customer personas and brand identity, which was amazing. And I was really intrigued to hear that your career started as a brand manager for Unilever, working with brands like Lipton. So I'd love you to take us back to where your story began and tell us a little bit about the journey to where you are now.
Yeah. So I guess there's kind of two parts. There's the journey into beer, which you've talked about already with rugby and that introduction to a pint. And certainly as soon as I could go into a pub, I was ordering a pint of beer. I wasn't it was quite a statement for me, part of my sort of personality and the image I was trying to create at that point. I don't know if it's kind of the Ladette culture of the 1990s, and I know there was a very iconic Boddington's ad with a beautiful woman drinking a pint, and that's who I inspired to be. So I've always loved beer, and it's been my beer of choice. And I've always had terrible hangovers. Um, but I just sort of shrugged it off and almost laughed it off and just normalized the fact that I would generally feel terrible the next day after I'd been drinking. And also very much wanting to kind of prove that I could hold my beer and drinking to keep up with, the rugby lads. So that was kind of my beer drinking and bad hangovers, um, which took me to the point of no more and things had to change. Um, and and also I guess having beer as part of my culture, part of my identity. So when it came to cutting back alcohol, the thought of cutting back beer was deeply problematic for me because it was so part of my sort of routine of particularly like the Tuesday evening, finishing work, kids are in bed, have a beer. Um, and I think many people find that if you're used to drinking alcohol and you reach a point where you want to make a change, it's quite embedded in your life and your how you socialize um and for me, finding a way to keep drinking but not having the alcohol was really important. And when I couldn't find decent alcohol-free beer to drink, to be honest, I had 3 children, 3 pregnancies. I never touched alcohol-free beer because I thought it's filthy. I just sort of drink water and soft drinks. Um, and But we did a dry January in 2018 and ordered a mixed case of alcohol-free beer. Tasted them all. Most of them were disappointing. A couple of them were okay, and I started or drinking one of them more regularly and enjoying the fact I was having that beer on a Tuesday night, and I was having that moment of sitting back, relaxation. But it wasn't the kind of beer that I would usually drink. Like I had a fridge full of beer brewed in Edinburgh, in Scotland, of interesting different craft beers, and I was drinking a German lager, and I felt really annoyed that I was being forced to make a different choice when I was trying to make a better choice for myself and my health. So that kind of was the germ of, well, if no one else is doing it, why don't I? And I'm afraid I don't have a Scottish accent. I am from Kent originally, but I made Scotland my home 15 years ago now. And really fell in love with the food and drink scene here and felt really strongly about provenance. And again, it's like, well, I'm proud to have made Scotland my home. So why doesn't Scotland have a alcohol-free beer it can be proud of? So that was sort of my starting point. And I guess I didn't have a background in beer or brewing or the drinks industry, so all of that was very new to me. But as you've mentioned, I did have some experience in brands, and I think that was partly where I kind of had confidence that at least I could nail part of the business. um, and yeah, so when I left university with a history degree, and as I have discovered, brewing is really biochemistry and engineering. So my history degree wasn't going to get me very far, but I then went to Unilever to their grad scheme, which was a brilliant training process. And there I learned about how you build a brand, how how you build food and drinks brands. And what I really loved there was I was managing brands that were part of people's everyday lives. So kind of going into supermarkets and see people pick it was Lipton chai tea. I tried to launch a green tea into the UK, so a bit ahead of the curve. But when you sort of people pick it up off the supermarket and put it in their baskets, and we used to do these things called consumer connections, where we would actually go and visit people in their houses, and they'd make you a cup of tea, and you'd look at how they'd made it. Or when I worked on Coleman's and Knorr, people would show me how they made a cheese sauce at home, and just kind of these digital interactions where you're making people's lives a little bit better, a little bit easier, a little bit of everyday joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that, and I think that was something that I kind of have always found food and drink businesses fascinating, and I think working with Etika I found really inspiring. It's kind of a really lovely interaction you can have with people by being one of the brands that's in their life. And also as a Unilever brand manager, the brand sits at the heart of the business. So I worked with everyone from the factory to sales, supply, innovation. So I kind of had an idea of how a business worked, and how to develop a brand and what a brand actually means. So I was very excited about doing the branding side of Jump Ship. and all of that was a huge amount of fun. And in my time as a marketing consultant, I'd met a great guy who used to work at used to be the creative director at the Leith agency. So he helped me with coming up with a name, coming up for a name for your brand. As you all know, it's really difficult. It's like naming a child. And thinking about all the different directions we could take it in. But we decided with Jump Ship to go for something that was personal to me, because obviously you can probably hear it in my voice. This is like a massive passion project for me. And so putting me into the brand made sense. And I like sailing. So Jump Ship, and then the beer names and things like Yardarm and Jack Staff and things like that. But also I wanted something that was an invitation, because there was still a real hesitancy about trying an alcohol-free beer, because previously the quality had been so bad. So I wanted something that was like an invitation to sort of jump ship, make a change, take a step away from mainstream drinking culture and what you're used to, and then try something different. So so that sort of that side of it was really fun. And I think the huge leap into the unknown was really about how I was going to get the beer made. And yeah, it's one of the classics. It's just as well I didn't know how much I didn't know, because I never would have started.
Isn't that the truth? Always.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's
Um,
incredible so far. Yeah. I love the name, and I just think how it integrates into the whole of the brand and all the different beer names as well. It's just incredible. And yeah, there's so much nuance to it, like jumping ship into the unknown. Yeah, it's just incredible. And yeah, from myself as well, I gave up drinking. It'll be a year ago this month, actually, just because I was getting terrible hangovers, and I just did a cost benefit analysis one day and realized actually I'm worse off having alcohol than if I didn't have it. So I'm just going to really try and stay present and just have alcohol-free alternatives. But it's really thanks to companies like Jump Ship that have amazing alcohol-free beers that I can go out in a social environment and order something that's no different from what everyone else is drinking, just that it's not got alcohol in it. But I can still have that social experience, that interaction. Um, and I've decided for myself, a lot of it's psychosomatic as well. So for me, it's about being as present as possible and trying to sort of really relax in the moment rather than using alcohol as a way to relax. Sort of really trying to be present to that. But with drinks like that, it's much easier rather than just having your sort of standard soft drinks and that sort of thing.
yeah, so I think it is something that I thought a lot about. I thought about all the things that really annoyed me when I wasn't drinking. So not having choice, because I'm someone who likes a range of different beers, and I don't want to just have a lager, and just being presented with one choice is really frustrating. I really like to enjoy a beer with food. I found that so many of the beers out there just didn't complement food. Like I remember going out for a really nice meal and be given this like huge bottle of wheat beer, alcohol-free wheat beer, and it was just like it was too filling and it was too sweet. And so having something that goes well with food, something that you can drink a lot of, because I think when you're going out with friends and they're drinking and you're not drinking and you're having a soft drink, I find that soft drink disappears in about 3 sips. Whereas everyone else is still drinking, and so you're there with an empty glass when everyone's got a full glass, and then you feel you're not part of the same occasion. So having something that was full flavored that I could sip and appreciate was really important. And also something that I could drink throughout the evening, because I found that some alcohol-free drinks just like the aftertaste got me after a while. It starts to get a bit chewy or a bit cardboardy, or it's something that's so packed full of sugar or gas that it's just uncomfortable and unpleasant to drink too much of it. So yeah, that was kind of all the things I thought about, just how to make people feel really included when they're not drinking and having it. And even down to the can design, I wanted something that was interesting, that was kind of eye-catching, and people go, oh, what are you drinking? Because previously, like drinking a non-alcoholic beer being almost like a shameful thing when you sort of try and hide the label. But for me, beer is part of discovery, and so I want to talk to people about what I'm drinking. I want to know what they're drinking. I want to taste it, you know. So bringing all of that into the brand and into the type, the quality of the beer that we develop is really important.
Yeah, it's just amazing how you've clearly thought about every single aspect of your business and the brand. And yeah, it's fascinating. I'd love to know more about how you actually, because I know you've got your own, you've taken the plunge, jumped ship and got your own factory recently as well. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so when I started Jump Ship, the dream was always to have our own brewery, but it was a step too far at the beginning when I kind of didn't know if people were going to like the beer, if they were going to drink the beer. And obviously setting up a brewery is a lot of money. So I started off just with one beer and one recipe. I did a startup brewing course where I quickly discovered that although I was fascinated by brewing, it was a lot more in depth than I realized, and that there's a reason it's a 4-year degree at Heriot Watt. But fortunately, while I was doing the course, I met a brewer who was willing to work with me on the first recipe. And yeah, so I got just like did 3 different batches, and I shared that with friends and family and bottle shops, and everyone I shared it with loved it. Um, so so yeah, that kind of gave me the courage to push on and try and scale it commercially. Um, Finding somewhere to brew it was really difficult because I wanted it to be brewed in Scotland. Um, and it needs to be a brewer that was not so big that they wouldn't look at me, and not so small that they wouldn't be able to scale as I grew. Um, and then so when I did actually find a brewer to work with, then actually replicating the quality of the recipe was really difficult. And I think that's when I realized that I kind of gone into this thinking, well, I'm not a brewer, other people know better than me. But actually, no one really knew at that point how to craft brew an alcohol-free beer. It just hadn't really been done at any sort of level. It's amazing how much it's changed in the last 5 years. It's kind of everything's gone like 100 miles an hour. But at that point, it was really novel. So it took a couple of different breweries and quite a few attempts to get the beer right at scale. And then launched in December 2019 with my Yardarm lager. And then obviously everyone know what happens in March 2020. Is it launched straight into lockdown. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think like every small business owner, I'm sure it was the same for you. We kind of went through a massive crash of, gosh, this is over. Nothing's going to survive this. To then sort of picking myself up the floor and sort of seeing a few seeds of opportunity with direct to consumer sales, local delivery in Edinburgh. Um, and built up from there. And I think just accepting that I was going to grow more slowly than I initially thought. And I've got so my husband at that point was working pretty long hours. I had 3 kids to homeschool and just managing all of that. I thought I can't do all of this. So yeah, just kind of do what I can to keep the business going and to build a community of people around it. And then as the world opened up again, probably more 21, I think it took about 18 months for hospitality and the on-trade to regain some confidence. And that's when we sort of really saw an increase in sales through our wholesalers. And then, yeah, but always thinking, yeah, I do really want a brewery. And I kept talking to people who said, no, don't do it. All the business advisors and potential investors were like, no, don't invest in a brewery, just invest in brand and sales and marketing. And I could see all around me that's what the other sort of competitors were doing. So the startups who, because as it was clearly becoming an opportunity, more people were taking a look, and everything did feel very brand led, and then the liquid was being contracted out somewhere else. But for me, I wanted to have that authentic producer story. I love doing the brewery tours. I like going around a distillery. I like seeing how it's made. I like meeting the people who've made it. And I wanted sort of alcohol-free beer to have that same experience side to it. I wanted to have a place where people could come and see how it's made, um, and to have that choice and variety and experimentation. And kind of under contract, it was very hard to. I couldn't really experiment. I had a brew slot. I had to hit that big brew slot. That beer had to work because I had to sell it. Whereas we can afford to get a few things wrong here, and also we learn from our own mistakes. You don't learn from other people's mistakes. So yes, so I sort of took the plunge in, was end of, yes, it would have been the end of 2022. Scary how time flies. And I wrote an email to my mailing list of about 1,000 people at that point saying, I've got this dream. I've got this dream of having a brewery where we can make the best alcohol-free beers, where you can come and visit, where we can brew as sustainably as we can. But to do that, I'm going to need money. And if I do this, would you back me? And if you do back me, how much would you back me by? So I remember sitting there for about half an hour with the email all written and just like press send. And I got a really amazing response. So these were people who have basically been buying my beer online for the last couple of years, and some of whom had got involved in the original. I did a rewards-based crowdfunding when I launched, where you kind of gave £15 and got a six-pack of beer in return. And the response I got from that kind of gave me the confidence to actually go ahead and launched a crowdfund on Cedars in February 23. Which I guess it's like crowdfunding is a bit like going through a washing machine. You sort of start the cycle and then you get spat out at the end. So quite intense in terms of sort of the marketing and the communication side of it. And it was also kind of in the midst of like a big cost of living crisis. We had massive energy spikes. It felt like a really bad time to be doing something like this. But actually the response was really positive. And I think like you said, I think it's a big deal for a lot of people when they decide to cut back on alcohol. And if you meet brands and people who are working hard to give you better choices, you kind of develop a deeper relationship than you would if you were, I don't know, getting an average pint down the pub. So yeah, so we got there, we hit our target and a bit more. And finding the site for the brewery was really difficult. Apologies for that background noise. Can you hear it? Is it okay?
Can't hear anything. Oh, good.
Magic. Magic. Well, I can hear you, so I'll keep going. But yeah, finding the site for the brewery was really difficult. Initially, I wanted to be in Edinburgh because that's where I'm based and where I started it all. But trying to find industrial space there was really difficult and it's really expensive. And I just happened to meet someone who knew someone who had a farm out in Midlothian who was developing these business units out of old farmsteadings. And I came down to take a look and it was just perfect. So it's kind of a really lovely community. I think there's 13 different businesses down here. Another micro brewer, coffee roaster, a lady, the skincare botanicals business. There's a florist collective. So just lots of interesting people and really beautiful countryside. And I think actually it makes a massive difference to me personally, being able to go and walk out in nature every day. Just being able to rest my eyes on hills and trees helps me kind of cope with the everyday challenges. And the other amazing thing is when I was looking around the unit, which is kind of a big square barn. It's not beautiful. We're on the less pretty bit. We're not in the nice picturesque courtyard. We're in the old grain store. There was a shed next door. I'm like, what's in that shed? And he's like, oh, that's the biomass boiler. It's like, what? It's like, it's an enormous, great big biomass boiler just through the floor, which the landlord built to power the drain dryers during harvest time. But it's not at capacity. So we've been able to tap into that biomass heat to heat our brew house. Because brewing is very energy intensive business. We have to heat a lot of water to brew. And I mean, energy prices at their peak, I thought that that was it for jump ship. I couldn't see a way past none of the spreadsheets were adding up anymore. But knowing that we were going to be able to move into this space where we would have um, reliable, sustainable energy and also energy security, which is not a word that I thought I would have used before, sort of 22. But knowing that whatever was happening in the world's geopolitics, that actually my energy was produced on site was great. So being able to see a way to really start to fulfill our sustainability promises as well that I'd made with the brand. So yeah, and then got possession of the site, which took a lot longer. I think it took nearly a year till we actually, or about 10 months before we were able to break ground. And then yeah, the installation of the brewery itself, again, a massive learning curve. Working with Pete Sharp, my head brewer, neither of us have been installed a brewery before. So that was a lot of learning as well. At the same time, we were running out of beer because we thought we'd be brewing already by now. So we'd sort of cut back on our contract stocks. But we got there. And so it was January the 12th last year when we brewed our first batch of beer on site. And I've kind of lost track of how much we brewed since then. But we're actually now at capacity and having to get more tanks in, which is a good sign.
That's fantastic. Wow. Gosh, there's so much there I'd love to pick up on. It's just such an incredible story. And yeah, great timing to have found a biomass boiler. I really wish
Yes.
I had found one of them because yeah, energy security is certainly not something to be overrated or
Mm-mm.
underestimated. And yeah, the whole energy debacle is one of the main reasons, I guess, well, quite instrumental in why I closed we had a tea room in the centre of Edinburgh, just because I didn't have any security and it was just unsustainable. You couldn't, it was going from like really high, it was just awful, awful
Yeah,
timing.
and
You
there's
can't run a
nothing
business like that.
you can't. I mean, I was phoning up utility companies because at that point, I thought we'd need a new energy contract when we moved into the brewery, and I was being quoted like £1 a kilowatt hour. And I built my business plan around about 9 pence a kilowatt hour. So it just did not work up. And then, it rippled through the cost of grain, the cost of hops, the cost of deliveries, cost of cardboard, just everything
Yeah,
going up. And it's still, I mean, it's still tough. Like it's not, there's a lot of economic uncertainty in the world. I mean, we've just seen a whole load of tariffs being clamped down. We don't do a huge amount of export, but we have done, and it's yeah, you've got to sort of work out what you can control and focus on that, and sort of try and plan for what you can't control the best you can.
yes. That's interesting you say that. That's been my mantra for the past 2 weeks, just focusing on what you can control, and letting go of things that you can't. And yeah, being wise enough to know the difference.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, indeed.
so important.
Yeah. And I think also reminding myself why one of the reasons I started a business, because I felt like as a business you have a voice and you can have an impact on the area where you operate, on your supply chain, on your employees, on your customers, on the people who work your beer. And I think when so much in the world feels quite scary and unkind, to be able to think, okay, well, what can we do ourselves in the bits that we directly impact to make that little bit a little bit better? And maybe that's all I can do in my life. But if I made that little bit a little bit better, then that's much, that's not a bad outcome.
Definitely. Well, I think that shows, and yeah, it's paying off as well. I'm interested in as well in sort of hearing about your journey. There seems to be lots of moments, lots of sort of serendipitous moments where you've come across the right person or the right thing at the right time. How much do you believe in sort of fate or just things happening and working out the way they're meant to work out?
Um, I think it plays a part in it. I think for me it's about people and creating opportunities for things to happen, and they won't always happen and they certainly won't always work out. But it if I'm it's like that party where I met that person. I really didn't want to go that night. I was like, oh, it's just going to be a load of boring people and I'm tired and I have to get dressed up. But you never know who you're going to meet. And as it turned out, and sometimes it's the person that you don't think is going to be like, there's a good reason to talk to them, or you just, it's connections, and you talk to someone who knows someone, and then things happen. Um, and so, I will push things out, and I will go to that conference in London, and I will go to that networking event, and I will reply to that email, because that's how things happen. You obviously got to put a guardrail around that as well, because if I took up every invitation, I'd be exhausted and burnt out. Um, but I think it's keeping moving, keeping momentum, because I think when you have momentum, then things will happen, even if I can't say yet how they're going to happen or why they're going to happen. If I'm putting enough things into play, then something will come off. So I don't know if that's so I think serendipity is part of it, but I think you kind of have work to have those situations where it could happen. And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't, but you need to get out there and try different things, even if sometimes you think, oh, that's probably, maybe I shouldn't, or yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very good advice.
yeah. And I
And
think I'm not a great one for reading business books, and I sometimes find that whole world of business sort of advice. This is, I'm someone who was a consultant, so a little bit overwhelming. But I like people, and I find people interesting. So meeting people and listening to their stories, and I feel you can learn so much that way. Just because I think every problem I've experienced as a business owner, I'm sure someone's experienced it already.
very true. And what do you do yourself because you must have a very stressful life with all you've got going on and family and everything else as well. What do you do to look after yourself or yeah, to work on yourself?
Um, it's really difficult, but I am really aware of how hard it is to start and run a business. And the worst thing that could happen is that I fall apart, because then everything falls apart. And I want to come home at the end of the day to my family and have something left in the tank for them, to meet them with the days that they've had, and be present for them. So I think as a working parent, as a mother and an entrepreneur, it's a lot. Um, so I think I'm trying to, and I wouldn't say I've solved it. I'm trying to sort of listen to myself, like what gives me energy and what takes away energy, and making sure that I'm getting enough energy back in for the energy that's going out. So um just sitting down and playing a game of cards with my daughter, just for 15-20 minutes or something like that, but just not worrying about the washing that hasn't been done, or the washing up, or um and I think just having enough time at home to potter. um I've got some chickens now. I have to say, I really love having my chickens in the back garden and going out and talking to them and collecting the eggs. And I'm sure an urban fox will probably do some damage at some point, but actually that takes me out in the garden every 10 minutes in the morning before, and I enjoy that time in the garden. I think being outdoors is really, really important for me. So I try and always go for a walk at lunchtime. And if I'm walking around the brewery, I'm walking through open farmland, I'm probably going to see some hares, some deer, a buzzard flying overhead. Just taking a bit of time to stop, and there's a big flock of field fares in the field, a sort of a species of bird like a large thrush, and I haven't seen them before, so just watching them for a bit. Swimming, outdoor swimming, getting away with maybe 2 or 3 times a year with friends to go hill walking. So yeah, just taking that time, which is, again, it's difficult. But yeah, there's certainly been times when I've really struggled. and it's not a good place to be in. Having a network of other business owners, female founders in particular, is being really important, because I don't think anyone else really understands what it's like. And I always quite find from the outside, people are like, oh wow, you've done this and it's amazing. And it's like, well, yes, it is amazing, but it doesn't often feel like that on the inside. And so being able to talk to other people who's just like, oh yeah, that was really awful and that was really difficult. And have you thought about doing it that way? Or, I missed school pickup and I felt awful about that. And I think having a sort of a peer group who really sort of understand where I'm coming from is important, and where I can kind of be vulnerable. Because there's as a kind of a, particularly when sort of the brand is part of who you are, there can be that pressure to be always a certain way, sort of that kind of confidence and that success. And but sometimes you don't feel like that, and I think it's important to be able to let that out as well. So yeah, I haven't really, I don't know, maybe some of what I'm talking about is mindfulness. I would like to do more sort of practicing mindfulness and meditation. I've not really done much of that, but I've bizarrely felt just reading about it quite reassuring, knowing that there are more techniques and things that I could be doing that will help to just slow things down, because it can always speed up.
And how much do you see the alcohol-free movement as being sort of linked to mindful drinking and slowing down?
Yeah, there's a really sort of a big part of it. I think when you've taken away the alcohol, then you're drinking the drink for the flavor and the experience. So I think you appreciate it more. So when I'm drinking an alcohol-free beer, I'm really just tasting the grain and the hops and the character of the beer. I'm not just, I need the alcohol. Um, and I've quite, I started drinking a few more sort of like a sort of spritz style non-alcoholic drinks I found quite good. And you can kind of cut the slice of orange and get the iced glass and the ice. And I think kind of recognizing the occasion when you want a drink and respecting that occasion, just not with alcohol, I think is really enjoyable. And I think you then sort of really begin to realize, as you've been saying, that, well, actually, what was the alcohol giving me here? Because I've got everything I wanted from that occasion without it. And I'm waking up without a hangover. So I think like the majority of people who drink my beer still drink alcohol. They're just moderating and drinking less of it and drinking it more mindfully. So I think there's quite a few people now who go out and they'll be mixing non-alcoholic and alcoholic drinks. It's not the evening isn't about going out and getting drunk, but you might want to start the evening with a really nice cocktail and then have a non-alcoholic beer. It's sort of just having the quality but not the quantity.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing to have so much variety now. And it's interesting you're talking about spritzers, because I use cold brew tea quite a lot and make it into non-alcoholic spritzers. But even beer spritzers as well work really well with a nice like white tea or an oolong or something like that. And just top it with a little bit of non-alcoholic beer. So there's just so much variety there.
Oh well, I've never thought of trying that, but that sounds delicious.
We need to put our heads together, come up with
Yeah,
a nice collaboration, I think.
absolutely. Um, yeah, and I think then just that thinking, and I think when I'm talking to people who you come into it as a point of I'm giving up, I'm stopping, and then you realize you're actually starting something new and you're gaining so much more, and there's a whole new world out there, and that actually going out and dancing when you're sober is maybe just as fun or more fun. It's a really exciting space to be working in, and I love hearing the stories that people tell about how alcohol-free beer has really made a difference. because it's kind of given them this new sense of discovery that they thought they weren't going to have. They thought, and it's given them confidence to go out when they weren't drinking, and actually to be just about as nerdy about beer as they ever were before, just realizing that the ABV is not what it's all about.
Mhm. Yeah, no, super interesting. And what's your vision for Jump Ship for the next, say, 5 years, 10 years?
Um, I'd like to continue to grow the business. There's kind of more changes in the brewery to increase our production. I'd like to be available in more places. We're still sort of a little jewel tucked away in Scotland. I'd like to be better known across the UK. I think to have more beer on draft. Because I think for me the non-alcoholic pint is sort of the pinnacle really, because then you're just having a pint in the pub and there's no label on it. You're not worrying about whether you're just having a pint of beer. It doesn't matter if it's 4.5% or 0.5%. It's beer. So I think growing that side of it would be important. Doing some more different events. Yeah, lots more different beer styles, lots of new recipe ideas, collaborations. Yeah, and in some ways I feel like we're only just getting started, because so much has been about getting the brewery up and running, getting our processes in place, that I feel like this year we're kind of really ready to spread our wings and fly.
I'm just amazed at how you have so much drive and passion and tenacity, and just sort of strengthen your conviction as well. I wonder where all that comes from. Where does that drive and determination come from?
I don't know. Someone said to me quite early on that I was very stubborn, and I kind of thought, yeah, I am actually. I don't know where that comes from. I think my mum is very stubborn. Um, but I don't know. I just don't. I like to see something through. I don't like to give up on something. Um, and I think I really love the beer. I love the product. I love drinking it, and I love seeing more people drink it. And I think that's what sort of pushes me on. And I love coming into work. And I think it's such a privilege to be doing this, that I'm kind of going to do everything I can to make sure that we can continue to do it.
Yeah, it's clear your passion and commitment shines through, and I'm sure you'll be fantastic for the next however many years you're brewing beer. So I can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank
Um,
you.
I'm curious if there's any one piece of advice that someone's given you that's really stuck in your mind that might be useful to others to hear.
Um, I think it was when I was quite early on, I heard it was the founder of Green and Blacks talking about how she got started, and she was just kind of like, just keep taking it step by step. Like, you might look up and not know how you're going to get there, but if you keep taking steps forward, then bit by bit you'll look up and you'll have a business. Um, and I think that's really good advice, because it can often seem so big and so overwhelming. So just break off the next small piece in front of you, and if you keep working through it, you'll get there.
Very good advice. And remember to enjoy it, which you're clearly doing, which shines through. It's not about the
Oh,
destination, is it, at the end of the day?
I'm very bad at looking back at how far I've come. Having these kind of conversations is very good for me, because I'm always looking at the mountain ahead and not how far I climbed.
Yes, I
Um,
think that's the curse of the entrepreneur, but
I think it is, yeah.
you take a moment while you're having your beer tonight to just look back at everything you've achieved from the past, is it 6 years now?
5,
Five, nearly six.
yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, it's just an incredible achievement, remarkable. And yeah, I can't wait to hear and see where you go to next. And I look forward to continuing to drink your beers, and look forward to some of your new limited edition ones coming soon.
Thank you.
Um, I know you've got a time schedule today, so as we draw this to a close, I'm curious if there's one sort of routine or ritual that you'd recommend people to try just in the 3 minutes that they're either brewing their tea or taking a mindful drinking pause this week, what would that one little routine be?
Um, I think for me, I like to sort of visualize memories of times. So when things are feeling frightening or overwhelming, I like to take myself back to a place where I felt really strong and confident and happy. And I really put myself back in that moment. So for me, it's 15 years ago, my husband and I did a 6 month sailing trip on a small boat in the Western Mediterranean. And we hit some big seas and some stormy times and was quite frightened at some point, but we kind of grew stronger and more experienced as we went. And there was sort of like, I think we're about 4 months into it, sailing up the east coast of Sardinia in some quite strong winds. And it was this beautiful sunny day. The east coast of Sardinia is very mountainous. So on my left side, there were these kind of big wall of mountains, and I could see a gap in the head and in the mountains. And I knew that when I hit that gap, the boat was going to get hit by a really strong gust of wind. But I felt really excited because I knew what I was doing, that I was in control of the boat. I loved that I could read the land and the sea and the conditions and know what was about to happen to me. And all of that experience and confidence that I had grown in the last few months had taken to me at that point of being in a moment of quite a lot of big weather around me, but it just being really exciting rather than overwhelming. And that sense of sort of pure exhilaration as the wind hit and as the wave hit me in the face. And so kind of when I bring myself back to that moment and think through everything in terms of the sound and the touch and the taste, and I feel that I'm stronger than I think I am, and I have it within me to deal with what I have to deal with today.
I think that's, yes, an incredible piece of advice. And I'm a huge believer in visualizing as well, or mentally rehearsing something, which is something we work on in the T mind system a lot. It all ties into the wood element, which is about spring and taking action. So if you're trying to achieve something, you've got a particular goal in mind, we work together and sort of really mentally rehearse that. But much like you say about that experience sailing, it's using all your senses and noticing how you feel in your body and transposing something that's happened that's gone really, really well in the past and sort of transposing that onto what's going to happen in the future so that it's already happened, because your mind doesn't really know the difference. So yeah, it sounds very similar and so, so powerful. So yeah, thank you. I would encourage people listening or watching to do that today and this week as you're having a little mindful drinking moment. Just take yourself back to a time when you felt either really strong, really good, really happy, whatever emotion you want to be feeling, and just see what you saw at that time and hear the sounds and really notice where you feel it in your body, and just take yourself back there using all your senses. It's just incredible. And yeah, notice that you can go back to that and tap into those feelings whenever you need to. So yeah, it's interesting you use the sailing analogy. That's something that comes up for me quite a lot because I grew up sailing on the west coast of Scotland when I was younger, and I have a really clear visualization of me sailing in a yacht with a team of people, and we've got a big spinnaker up, and it's the wind's strong, but we're just floating along in this beautiful sunny day with a lovely blue spinnaker and the blue sky and the sounds, and yeah, everything's just flowing the way it's meant to. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, great feeling.
in interesting. So yeah, if you can't get on a boat, visualize it.
Indeed, indeed.
But yes,
Um,
thank you so much. This has been, I feel like we've only just tapped the surface. There's so much more to chat about, and the whole non-alcoholic market and brewing and everything is just such a huge topic. It'd be worth further exploration, definitely. And I can't wait to try even more of your beers, and we should definitely get together and collaborate, see how we can bring jump ship and etiquette together somehow. That would be great.
that would be excellent. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me along today and giving me a
Thank
chance to look down the mountain.
Fantastic. Well, you should be very proud. Thank you so much for coming on the T Mind podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I encourage you to consider one idea that you could take forward into your own life today. If you found this useful, please share so that we can bring more people along on this Tea Mind journey with us. And just a little disclaimer to note that the content shared on the Tea Mind podcast and web pages are for informational and inspirational purposes only, and are not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your doctor or qualified healthcare professional with any questions that you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of something you've heard on this podcast. The host and contributors of the Tea Mind podcast disclaim any liability for decisions made based on the information provided. Always consult a professional for your individual needs.